Hello and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by three friends who love cinema. I'm Nathan and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Gus and Alvaro. Tonight you'll be staying in room 133, Malignant, the one-of-a-kind horror film directed by James Wan. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we cut out the cancer with Malignant.
Oh my God. He speaks.
He's broadcasting his thoughts.
I thought we could help him, but I was wrong. It's time we cut out the cancer.
What's going on, all you parasitic twins? Thanks for checking back in the Grand Cinema Hotel. If you're listening on YouTube, as always, give us a little like, hit that subscribe button, smash it, actually. If you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcast app, subscribe for notifications so you get let know when we drop our newest podcast. And that takes us to the next video in our horror movie showdown of our 8 movies that we ranked. It's Malignant, directed by James Wan, the one-of-a-kind horror movie. Woo! I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, boys. But yeah, let's before we get into the movie, let's talk a little bit about James Wan, since he is pretty popular in today's horror sphere.
You want to go first, Ro, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay, so James Wan, right? This is one of the most successful filmmakers working in Hollywood today, and I think that he follows a trend of filmmaking that we don't usually cover on this show. So we were talking off-pod about, like, you know, our favorite directors like PTA and Tarantino and all of that. Those are like anomalies that you have two guys who have like banger after banger, or even like most filmmakers that we like. It's pretty incredible that some of them have such strong filmographies.
Very rare.
Yeah, and I feel like James Wan teeters that line of where his filmography, it's not that they're all these like great, incredible, changed my life movies, but he is tapped into the mainstream like more than most of the directors that we cover. Like, I think he makes the most accessible films, and that they're mainstream horror instead of like the elevated A24 type of horror. And I think he's played a big part in the past 20 years, basically, of influencing the genre in a mainstream sense.
It's big facts.
I have a lot more to say about him, but I kind of want to open the floor to you guys.
No, that's big facts. I mean, he's a very interesting director because he does have some movies that I think are obviously better than some of his other ones. So, especially Saw, like I think that is probably his best movie, and Malignant, of course.
His first and his last movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else in the middle is okay.
It's interesting, but I mean, his ability to create like 3 of the most popular, maybe not the best, but popular horror franchises that we've had in the past like 10, 15 years with Saw, Insidious, and The Conjuring. Like, everybody has probably seen those or at least knows of them.
And then the spin-offs of The Conjuring.
Of course, The Nun and
like
Annabelle.
The Conjuring verse.
Yeah.
Like, this dude's a machine.
No, he really is.
Cranking out new original ideas that later on become IP. Like, I think as of now, he's probably the only director that's doing that. Like, creating original IP that goes on to be way bigger than he might have intended.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And like, we really don't cover these kinds of directors, I feel like. So I think this is a good one to do.
Hey, I mean, yeah, I don't think we would have done The Conjuring or Insidious. And when those were on our horror showdown bracket, we had talked about that. Well, The Conjuring wasn't, but Insidious was. And I feel like both of those movies, they're like love letters to other movies that are very obvious. So it's like The Conjuring is like a worse Exorcist, and Insidious is like a worse Poltergeist. So I do think he was in that mode for a while of like, I'm gonna try to remake something I really like.
And you know what I just thought about is that he is tied with John Carpenter on our list for having 3 horror movies on there.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that with Saw, Insidious, and then Malignant.
I mean, he's a big part of my formative film watching years, especially because it was at a time when I was very young and I didn't know about directors or anything like that. I wasn't looking into them. But when I looked back, I realized that I'd seen every James Wan movie either when they came out or like as soon as they were on at the video store or on DVD or something like that.
I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't know that James Wan did Saw until after I saw *Malignant*. Like
Really?
I had no idea who had done Saw, and then I realized that he was all over the place.
Hey, maybe that's props to Saw that it feels like this disgusting, weird thing that's like nobody made this. They found this. This actually happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Ro, would you like to talk about James Wan a little bit?
I will say that I wanted to point out that this is the newest film on our top 8.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the only one that we have from the 2020s. I feel the opposite way about James Wan. Every time I've seen one of his movies, it doesn't really hit me in any way. The 2000s is like my least favorite horror era, which is funny because that's the one I grew up in. I just did not like any of the horror movies, and I think his movies are specifically almost the culmination of why I don't like any of that era's horror movies. I think they're just very they're not very narrative driven, and I think it's very hard for me to put myself in any of the situations that he's ever made movies for. So I don't find myself like encapsulated like I do in other horror films that I really, really like.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I don't think that he's worth defending of like, no, you're wrong.
No,
he's
yeah.
made these incredible movies. I don't feel that way. But I have had a lot of fun watching James Wan movies.
It's definitely a different type of. He's a different type of director. Like even like Insidious and The Conjuring, like they're enjoyable films. I don't think that they're anything spectacular. I actually do love Saw. Like I do think Saw is a really fine movie. And *Malignant*, dude, this is just different. So.
My favorite movie of his, honestly, is probably, I think it's tied for his latest too, is *Aquaman* and *Malignant*. Like, and I think it is because I love the fact that he is so bold and heavy-handed, and no, it doesn't always work, but I just like that there's a guy out there like he's kind of like the horror adventure Michael Bay, you know what I mean, where I'm like, I don't know if this works, but I'm really enjoying it, and I feel like the entertainment is more important than the actual quality of the movie, which I mean, I guess you could say one way or another that that's good or bad, but for me, I will admit that he's not great, but that it entertains me the way that like the Fast and the Furious entertains people,
exactly.
whatever franchise that you like.
I think you have to kind of know like what kind of movie you're going into. Like I don't think you should expect anything that's, I don't know.
I mean, we love the A24 elevated, heavy, that blew my mind horror, but that is not what he is, and he's never tried to be either. So I think that he's a little clumsy with his with like the scripts and stuff like that, and I don't even know if he's written all of his movies. He didn't write *Malignant*, but I just think that like the plot sometimes for him is getting in the way of all the cool shit.
Let me do this though, yeah.
So I mean, I just think he's a lot of fun, and I don't want to say we don't ever talk about fun on this, but that's not something we usually put first in
that's
our
true.
movie reviews or like the movies we like to cover. Is we don't usually tend to walk out and be like, that was fun because it was light and entertaining. It was more like, that was fun because it really fucked me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I really like James Wan overall. And, I mean, the world does too. This guy has made like $1 billion movie with Aquaman. He made The Furious 7. Is that the one where the cars jump through the buildings?
I'm pretty sure. I don't even
Walker
remember. Like the last 6 just blend together for me, so I'm not even sure.
The only one I remember is Fast 5, and then everything after that is a blur.
Yeah.
Because I think Fast 5 is the best one. But I saw going into this movie that after making Furious 7 and Aquaman, that he was like, I need a break before I go into Aquaman 2, and I want to do something that I love that encapsulates everything I love about horror. And I do think you get that in this movie, and for better or worse, it's like 10 different things going on at once.
For sure.
And it reminds me of like, okay, this is why The Empty Man is good, but this is why you could say this movie is bad.
Yeah, I would
And
agree.
I just think that has to do with the writing first
No,
and
100%.
foremost.
And like that's why I think like going into this, like especially on the rewatches, like this movie is obviously not made like it's not a crazy story, and the dialogue is pretty corny. Like this movie to me really is like I don't know, it's like a really good B movie, honestly. And it feels like that's like the intention that he went in to create this movie. Like he really did just want to have fun with it.
I think it's a B movie that paraded around and disguised itself as a mid-budget mainstream like A movie.
For sure.
And maybe because James Wan is so successful, that's what people were expecting, but he totally made a B movie.
No, for sure.
And I do think it's on purpose. I don't think it's an accident.
I think
I've seen
so,
some
too.
people who think of it as like he doesn't know what he's doing, but I think it's intentional.
I think he knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really want to get on this too hard, but so much of the old stuff that people like of like 80s horror and stuff like that, it's not like it was considered great at the time either. It had to build its following, and I do kind of feel that way about Malignant, where it's like it has its core group of the Gabriel Hive, but then I do think in like 20 years people are going to look back on this and be like, that's pretty nuts that they did that, especially when he had just made so much money.
Yeah.
And then for Warner Brothers to take this risk of letting him make a film that people consider bad, I think he cashed his check of like, look, I just made you guys $1 billion and I want to make this fucked up weird movie that I think is interesting.
No, this was his little baby, I guess. You know what I mean? Like putting it like that. But because even like with the trailer really reminded me of like some of his other previous movies. Like it almost kind of felt like, all right, another supernatural movie. Like we're gonna have to figure out what's going on. Blah 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 blah.
Elongated
And then
hallways, wide angles. Fog always for some reason, because he just understands that you need fog
inside the house
movie.
at 7 a.m, foggy as fuck. Makes sense, right? But no, this movie was not that at all. It totally just it swerved hard on what I thought it was gonna be, which is why I think I really liked it. But
He did say he made this movie for the true horror fans.
yeah,
Which is kind of a cop out. It's hard. When you say something like that, it's like you're already kind of validating your fan base by going like, well, if I like this, then I'm a true horror fan, and you don't like this, and so you obviously don't like horror, which is kind of that's kind of in bad taste, honestly, to be like, it's for the real horror fans. But a lot of James Wan's work and this movie, I think, are made in bad taste, where he doesn't make these like, or he doesn't okay, you know how when we talked about Men, Alex Garland was discussing that in an interview, that he felt like if you're going to make a movie about something that you don't understand, you should try to be like gentle and thoughtful about it. I don't think James Wan does that at all.
No, he's like, let's go. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, like Ro had seen this meme. I mean, James Wan didn't actually write this movie, but the meme is like, James Wan be like, I know some writers who use subtext. They're cowards. And even though this wasn't written by him, he does have like pretty much full control.
I mean,
he
yeah,
produced this movie,
it's
he
his
directed this
movie.
movie, it's story by, and it was created by him and his wife, which I find interesting as well. Like,
so
what's going on in your guys' house?
Yeah,
You guys
what
just
the hell?
spitballing these horrible ideas
For
back
real.
and forth. I think this brings us to, well, there's no way to really get around it, but Edward Mordrake.
Yup.
right?
Like this movie really is literally just a creepypasta flushed out into
Well,
a 2-hour movie.
It's OG creepypasta.
Yup.
This is like 1800s, 1900s creepypasta.
Yeah, this is like something that
right?
you found on like Facebook back in the day too. Like this has been around for a long time.
I love the idea of the creepypasta movie, because it's like, I'm going to base it on this legend that isn't actually a legend. It's
Yeah,
just
just
a
some
post on
made up
Reddit.
shit. It's like yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious to me.
Like this is a real life Slender Man movie. You know what I mean? Like,
when are we doing the Mothman prophecy?
maybe next week. I don't know. But dude, like no, this movie's like it's ridiculous. Like it really is. But then you also get the flip side of that, where you get some absolutely phenomenal shots and like some great horror sequences. I think
James Wan is a lot of things, but you can't say he's not stylish.
No, that's all this
and that's
movie
what I mean
is.
about like
yeah.
the entertainment is trumps the quality of the movie, honestly, for the most part.
This is like it's like a weird blend of like horror, action, comedy. I guess you could even say.
Yeah, a lot of camp. You know what I mean?
All
Where
the
it's like-
camp.
and camp for the most part does mean that it's not funny. It's trying to be
Yeah,
funny, or
exactly.
it's so weirdly. It's only funny because it's kind of dumb.
It's
You know
almost
what I
like
mean?
even the ways that the actors deliver their lines in this movie, it's just so like over exaggerated, and the pauses that
the
they
law
take.
enforcement in this movie is like in a daytime melodrama.
Yeah, no, this
CBS,
is like a
CSI.
Lifetime movie world that that Gabriel is taking over.
It doesn't feel like a real world, that's for sure.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Oh man. The cast, no disrespect, but it's not like we have any huge names in this movie. So I can name some of them off just for you guys, just for the sake of doing it.
This is a cast of doppelgangers. So
Yeah, this is what we were talking about before. the
low
pod
budget
started.
doppelgangers.
So we have Annabelle Wallace, Maddie Hassan, George Young. Most of these people you probably never heard of, right? And Annabelle Wallace has worked with James Wan multiple times. She was the girl in the beginning of the first Conjuring with the Annabelle doll.
Okay.
Yeah, so back then when he made that movie, he had gotten pretty interested in her, so he was like, I want to make something for you eventually. And then, you know, she had to wait her turn. But
Yeah, there you go.
I think she may have gotten his most interesting role.
That's the most unique, at least, yes, for sure.
Because as much as I like The Conjuring, I wouldn't say anyone in that movie is interesting.
No.
But we had talked about the doppelganger thing. It's like everyone in this movie looks like someone else who was already much more famous.
Straight up.
The main character kind of looks like Jodie Comer a little bit. The sister kind of looks like Florence Pugh. The detectives kind of look like Wanda Sykes and Keanu Reeves. It's like this weird, like it's so B movie that even the actors don't look like real actors. And no disrespect, I really don't mean that in a awful way, but it's just so funny to me when I'm watching the movie and I see these people. I'm like, dude, you look like someone else.
You're a Sim. Like this is the Sims.
Just a fucked up clone. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Where it's like, how do we even? Can we cast Florence Pugh? Nah, she'd never go for this. Like, but we'll find a girl that kind of looks like her.
So funny.
I do think the standout is. Let me make sure I get her name right because she gives obviously the best performance in this movie. Her name is Marina Mazeppa, and she's the one who's doing all the body movement as Gabriel.
It's incredible, yeah.
And she was found on America's Got Talent.
Oh, really?
She's a dancer
like a
and
contortionist. That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
James Wan, I guess, you know, salt of the earth James Wan watches America's Got Talent, and he's like, I could make her work in a movie.
I can totally picture him watching that and writing this movie. Like, you know what I mean? And then I got American Idol on DVR after this.
He's like, now let me see who I can get to do the music.
Just
flips to the Masked Singer.
Just the most mainstream shit ever. Like, oh
but she actually brings a ton to the role because Spectral Motion is the company that does that made the Gabriel effects, like the animatronics and the puppets.
It's pretty
and the
cool,
prosthetics
honestly.
and all
I think
that.
it's fun.
I checked out their Instagram page to see the videos that they put out for this. It's just really awesome to see the love of practical filmmaking being brought into this because he has the money and the willpower to be like, we're just going to do this all CGI.
And he does use a good bit of CGI in the movie with certain scenes, but
I think it works because it's prosthetics and the animatronic, like especially the animatronic. I feel like that's something you don't really see anymore.
no, that's really cool.
And we had talked about on the Thing, not to compare these two movies at all. Don't get it twisted. But I do think that just that practical effect work always makes your movie just so much better because it makes it more unsettling.
Well, it does, and I think that's a good. I like that you brought that up because I mean, before you get this, like the first like 2/3 of this movie is this big build up kind of thing, and you don't really know what's going on. Well, you know what I mean. Like you don't get the reveal really of what's going on, but you can see the movement in which Gabriel is moving and like running and jumping, and it just looks off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what I didn't notice until this is my fourth time watching this, and what I honestly didn't notice until now is like the first time when he grabs that trophy, there's that you could tell the hand is backwards.
Yeah.
And I had never noticed that before.
The first time
I'm a bad movie watcher.
I did notice it the first time I saw it, but I didn't notice everything being super like weird or backwards. I didn't even know it was backwards. I just thought that it looked off is when Gabriel was like running away from Krakoa or whatever his name was and like jumping all over the buildings and Spider-Man ended up. Yeah. But that's what I noticed and I was like, what the fuck is this? So I think it's really cool. It works.
So what I was trying to say about Marina Mazeppa, though, is that because she's a contortionist and a dancer, they didn't really know what they were going to do with the Gabriel movements until they brought her on board. And then she started showing them what she could do and the whole moving backwards and all of that. And then that's where James Wan's mind starts turning of like, okay, I can do some fucked up cool shit with this.
Here we go.
And I saw that she had to learn. So she had to learn how to do all the choreography going forward, right?
Right.
And then she had to learn how to do it slow motion walking backwards, and then from there to do full reverse like the entire take. So she's literally moving backwards the entire time. And I know there's effects that add to it to make it look better, but I just think that's a phenomenal performance, and it's the type of performance we haven't really highlighted yet. Honestly, the only other time I could think about is when we talked about, unless I'm wrong, her name's Catherine Hunter, the lady who played the witches.
Oh yeah, in Macbeth.
Macbeth. That's the last time we've really talked about an actor and the way that they can contort their
body
like
work.
That type of performance. So
We're gonna talk about it again in Suspiria.
yeah. You know what? That's tight that we're doing that. I love that. Well, I love body horror because it's the first type of horror that really like got to me. Like I would be scared of everything, but body horror was the one where it's like I don't want to look.
It's
like,
very
this really
fucking uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love this fucking movie.
All right. Do you want to get into it a little bit?
We can try.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot confirm that you will understand this movie by the time I am done explaining.
All right. Well, the little synopsis that IMDb gives is that Madison is paralyzed by shocking visions of grisly murders, and her torment worsens as she discovers that these waking dreams are in fact terrifying realities. Doesn't really give a whole lot away.
Okay, so when did you see this movie the first time?
I think I saw it like right after you did. Because like I remember you telling me about it, you're like, dude, you got to see this movie. And I was like, all right. So I just went and checked it out.
I passed the drugs along.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, yo, you want some of this? It's not good for you.
Fucking hooked.
You don't want none of this,
Here we
man.
go again.
She walks backwards.
I think I do want this. It doesn't make any sense. I think I want this.
Like, does it make sense? No.
No.
And they don't try to.
All right, here we go.
Sorry, where were we?
The beginning of the movie? No, I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So the first time I saw this movie though was actually on my birthday. So
Okay.
it had come out on HBO, and I always like to do this thing of like, what's the last movie I watch in a certain year of my life? And I started doing this when I turned 25 with The Matrix, and that's when I fell in love with The Matrix. But I was like, all right, cool. James Wan is doing a new horror movie. I don't think this is going to be great, but it'll be fun to watch a horror movie at home. And it was still when they were doing the day and date releases of HBO Max. Like, you could see this in the theater, you could see it at home. And the only thing, I didn't even know this movie was coming out. That's not a big thing I'm into, is like, I need to know years in advance what movies are coming out. I kind of just let them come to me, really. But I had seen a billboard for this, and I thought it looked interesting, like the the mind game of like, oh, it's actually Two Faces, right? Yeah. And I had never even seen the trailer either. I was like, I'm just gonna go in blind. And the first time I watched it, I was like, what? Okay, this is fine. And then it started going more towards the middle and the end, and it really just blew me away. And I think the beginning is actually just kind of whatever, honestly, because it's so James Wan.
Yeah,
right?
It is. It's very convenient. I think a lot of the things that happen are totally and completely convenient.
Without things being convenient.
Yeah. But no, like I was honestly hooked on this movie from the intro. Like the hardcore like rock that comes in with like all the like the medical backgrounds to it during the opening credits.
Open, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm talking about because there's like two openings to this movie.
No, yeah, there really are. But no, I was interested in that. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then it really reminded me of like a lot of like mid like 2000s like horror openings with just this
Case Files and new metal music.
Yeah,
right?
like excessive rock for no reason. But I was like, all right, let's go. And it almost put me in like the headspace like, all right, this is going to be something that's, you know, a little different maybe, or like maybe it's paying homage to some stuff like that. And I think that it was.
I think this movie is weirdly paying homage to like the 80s, and not in a good way. I wouldn't say like probably in all the worst ways of 80s movies that people didn't like at the time, right? I also think it's somehow riffing on his own movies and the movies that he's influenced. So I do want to talk about the openings, or well, both opening scenes, right? The first one is just full on horror shit show.
Chaos.
What the hell is going on, right?
Bodies flying.
And it also lets you know that you're in for an exhibition fest.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Like this movie is just dumping information. And I think it's because it's not important to him, at least.
No, it's not.
The writer obviously tried. Her name is Akela Cooper. She tried her best, I feel like, to try to make this movie make sense, but then it got back into his hands and he's like, fuck it, we ride. You know what I mean? So I think it's a mixed bag between the script trying too hard and then the director not really caring about the script.
Yeah, he definitely didn't lean into it. So
No. He leaned into the opening scene, you know what I mean, of like parasitic twins and arms snapping off and red lights for
no reason.
Alarm systems go off and red lights go off. And we get the iconic line of it's time to cut out the cancer.
It's time to cut out the cancer. Every good horror movie needs a tagline.
Yeah, I mean, so I think this movie has actually made me more nostalgic for that time period, even though I didn't love it when I grew up in it. Like much like Rose said, when I was a kid, I think what stopped scaring me about horror movies was the mid 2000s. It's where I was able to finally start understanding why these movies were more fun.
They're pretty weak, yeah, in terms of like actual scare factor. Like one of the only mid 2000s movies that really did scare me was probably The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah,
honestly.
And, I mean, this all starts with, even though that's a remake, I feel like that wouldn't happen if it wasn't for Saw.
No,
we wouldn't have got like Hostel and The Hills Have Eyes and maybe even some of Rob Zombie's movies.
It's like, yeah, mid 2000s is just straight gore fest, really.
Do you have any movies from the mid 2000s that you do actually are really fond of?
Jeepers Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers.
That's a good one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we talked about that movie.
I fuck with Rob Zombie and like House of a Thousand Corpses and shit
I like Rob
that.
Zombie's Halloween's, but I mean, even when I've rewatched them now, I understand that I like them, but I know they're not good movies.
Yeah.
And like I rewatched like which one was Freddy versus Jason. Like that movie sucks. It's cool, but that movie sucks. And that's
it's
like
no
the
Batman
same.
versus E.T.
Be like, yeah, exactly. It's just all of those movies are not narrative driven whatsoever. It's all just exposition to set up the showdown for stuff, and it's kind of like, yeesh, I don't know. To me, it's like that's no other genre gets that excuse. No other genre. Only horror gets that excuse to be like, oh, it's what it is. Be like, if you say so. Like I don't really understand why it dropped all of a sudden in the mid 2000s. Like why that took the forefront or like took a back burner.
In the 90s. Like horror movies in the 90s are not great. It's like name one right now
No, it's
that
true.
you love. Like Scream. Like that's not even that great of a movie.
The 90s, yeah. That's a good point.
And the 80s, okay, because you can make the excuse that horror has never been a good genre. Like it's not like a heavy hitting every single time you're going to get something good. For the most part, it's bad. And I feel like there's diamonds in the rough of the genre. You know what I mean? And I feel that way about sci-fi as well, where it's like what genres work, you know what I mean? It's just it has to do with genre filmmaking.
No,
because
it's true.
like if you like action movies, you don't like every action movie. If you like horror, there's always bad times, and for some reason I feel like the bad always outweighs the good.
I think it's really like that for like sci-fi, horror, and fantasy.
Yeah.
Like for every 15 of those movies that come out, there's gonna be one that really hits. Like, you know what I mean? And like you can find your camp in the middle that you personally like, but you know, there's a lot of garbage out there too. So
Yeah, I think
I mean, and now movies have had the time to like slow burn and for people to really think about like, well, how do I feel about The Thing? You know, because we talked about that movie was a failure at the box office. It was a failure with critics, and now it's acclaimed as one of the greatest movies ever. And it actually is one of the greatest movies ever. But I'm not going to sit here in front like so many of the 80s movies that I love are actually really great movies, like Chud. You know what I mean? Or like I feel like now movies are more inspired by bad movies than they are good ones, if that makes sense.
No, that does.
Because it's like, these are the things I really liked, and now that I'm old enough to make a movie, I'm going to show you how to do this the right way.
And I think that's exactly what this movie pretty much is.
And I did want to talk to you about this movie, Ro. It's Basket Case, right? You've seen this movie. I know this movie actually is a source of inspiration for Malignant. I saw your Letterboxd review. You don't really love that movie either,
No.
right? Do you just have a thing against parasitic twins?
No, I think that has to do with the same thing. It's not very plot driven. It is a B movie. The characters are terrible actors in it. I just think some of that stuff is like, you don't indulge me. It doesn't put me in the atmosphere. So I'm not there. So I don't feel there's cool scenes in that movie. You know what I mean? There's some cool kills, but it's
Is there
definitely
cool
like,
scenes in this movie?
yeah, there's cool scenes.
I also wanted to ask you, because we've never really done this either. Do you think that there is a good movie buried somewhere in this?
Yeah.
Like that
But
this could be
another director would make a
badass
good movie. Yeah.
Interesting. Because, I mean, I understand the gripes. You know what I mean? I empathize that this movie is way too plot heavy, even though it shouldn't be.
No, yeah.
And that it's very convenient, and that it also takes a lot of liberties of you just going along for the ride, right?
100%.
And then, okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask you, though, is like we talked about Halloween being a B movie as well, right? And then the more I think about that movie, I'm like, that movie has no plot. It's all atmosphere. But in like your opinion and many others, that trumps that the movie is not really plot driven, right?
Oh wait, what, Halloween?
Yeah, Halloween. Like things like that.
Well, I think for me personally, be like if you're John Carpenter in 1979, Halloween
78, I think.
In 1978, your budget isn't very big and you're known as a B-roll, like a B kind of director. That's your
Well,
look.
you're hardly even
really
known as a director.
Yeah, like that's your thing. Like that's your thing. But James Wan is making Aquaman. So what is the excuse to make a B movie just because you want to? Like
Yeah.
there is no
yes, that's as simple as it is.
like
Yes,
like
he
if
wanted to do
John
that.
Carpenter might not be able to get like Jamie Lee Curtis's first role because that's how small he was. Be like, so he can only get non-actors, and he pushed them to actually do a good job. But here it feels like you're purposely getting people who aren't good to try to do a movie that's just not good. And then what is the excuse? Because we have eras of B-roll movies, and you took the worst of all of them, and then whereas like I didn't learn anything of why these movies actually suck. I just be like, well, I like them. And then, like you said, he's like, it's for the true horror fans. Be like, well, it's like you have to understand that you're having a bias here. Be like, and you're making a movie for that bias, but it's kind of weird that you're gonna say it's for the true horror fans. It kind of just seems like you're making a movie for yourself, and that's fine. But I also kind of think
we also didn't like Last Night in Soho, and that was the same exact thing. And I made this for me and what I like. And I actually feel like we kind of had a problem with those movies last year. We didn't really love the movies that were, oh, this is based off of something I loved. Like, I know you guys like The French Dispatch more than I did, but The French Dispatch and especially Last Night in Soho and even Antlers and a couple of other movies where it was like, they were making things that they loved seeing and they didn't really work for us either. I'm just saying, I see the correlation on all ends of the different movies.
I will say, like, I like Last Night in Soho, so that worked for me. But yeah, I don't know. I just didn't see why he did it. I guess it's because, like you said, he wanted a little break. But that's what it feels like. Like you just took a movie that you can write, and I don't know, like 20 days, and was like, all right, let's do this.
I mean, I feel like it is him just throwing his chips on the table and being like, I'm doing this because I can.
Yeah,
no, I've earned that ability to, like, I'm gonna make this little thing that I feel like making, and guess what, Warner Brothers, you're gonna do it if you want another $1 billion movie.
This movie is a guilty pleasure for him. Like it is. Like it really is. I mean, and that's what we're like. Is that a great excuse? Like maybe not, but no. I also think that this movie really does work, and I like the way that it was done because like I was saying, like it juxtaposes itself with this shitty acting and this weird dialogue writing, honestly, and a weird story, and it juxtaposes that with like I think it has some phenomenal shots.
Yeah,
and I think
the camera work is
incredible, right? And the visual effects are also fucking incredible. I think the practical effects. So I don't know, like it is weird that you can have a movie have like different parts of it be so good and others are just so ignored. But like I also think that's why it's fun. Like to me, this is a movie like you can throw on like with the homies and have some beers and just be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you know what I mean? But obviously like this movie does not work for everybody. Like it is kind of polarizing. But the people that do like it seems to be like the same thing. Like obviously everybody's aware that the dialogue is shit and that there's too much exposition. But everybody that likes it also agrees that they think it's a shit ton of fun.
It reminds me a lot of Old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where Shyamalan does the same thing. Shyamalan and James Wan kind of remind me of each other. Where it's like, I can do some really incredible stuff, but then there's also these other halves of the movie that I'm not the best at directing. Yep. And they tend to be the more important parts of filmmaking, like dialogue and script.
And which is funny because I know we were talking off pod, I think it was before you got here. I think like James Wan kind of reminds me of Edgar Wright in that way. Where
he reminded me of Sam Raimi.
Yeah, and
I like him the way people like Sam Raimi.
That makes a lot of sense. Like even like, you know, Baby Driver and like Last Night in Soho, they have parts in it that are fucking phenomenal. And then there's other parts where it's like, why the fuck would you do this? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, I just think he's interesting because he isn't regarded as being great, but he just makes these things that really hit the mainstream.
Extremely popular,
like
yeah.
I honestly do think that Gabriel is going to be like an iconic horror character for years to come.
Give me the action figure.
They might not ever give another movie, but I think this is the kind of thing it's like you're going to see some Halloween costumes on film Twitter or people doing weird fan art of him. Or like James Wan recently won an award, and I think it was for *Malignant*. But it was just the other day, but he was on the set of Aquaman 2, and behind him he had the Gabriel animatronic.
Oh, really?
So he accepted the award. Gabriel was right there with him.
That's pretty cool. How do you guys feel of like, okay, not like in the story sense, but like as a horror villain, like how do you guys feel about Gabriel?
I love him.
Yeah.
Gabriel Hive, activate.
Yeah. What do you think about him?
I don't know. It's saying the same plot holes that the whole story has, I think, is the inception of, like you brought up when he like jumps out of the window, right? I've seen a bunch of scenes where it's gone invisible. Why did it not choose to go invisible at that point? Why is it running away from the police? And then there's like this is like that specifically. I was like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. And then like it, I don't know, like him literally calling the doctor to be like, it's time to cut out the cancer. Be like, you were just using every radio to talk to people and be very ominous with that. Like, what the fuck is going on? And now you're literally calling the doctor. Like, you had to look up her phone number on the person that you just took. Be like, but then there's another scene where she took the phone book. Like, she went into the phone book to look where the other person was. So I was like, I feel like there's she has supernatural powers for some things, and then it gets taken away, and then she's just what she is in certain points, and it's like, how does that make any sense whatsoever? So that's like, for me, is like, I don't know.
So I thought that he could talk through the cell phone, not like that's not his actual voice, but he's using the cell phone because it's electrical. Like his voice is coming through the cell phone, not actually him, right?
Yeah, honestly, like I don't know. Like I really don't know because like that's one of the things that doesn't like why can't he communicate through electricity?
Okay. There's a scene where they're in the hospital and the guy has a heart beater and it blows out of his chest, right? Yeah. Which is cool.
Yes.
But then it's literally like, okay, everybody in this hospital, like there's people on the machines. How come those machines didn't blow? How come only his heart blows up? How does that make any sense?
He wanted him to.
Because it just does. Be like, okay, like, I don't give that excuse to any other. Like we shit on Marvel movies all the time for this, for not making any sense or any other type of movies.
We need to do a Marvel movie soon to get back at Nate for this.
Get back at me.
Like, you know, so I just like,
yeah, at least this is cool. Marvel. Oh, no.
Well, okay, so
that's what I mean. Like, certain things get a pass, certain things don't.
Do you not like the idea that he has all these superpowers?
It just doesn't make sense.
No, I mean they're not trying to explain it, and this is what I mean about this movie being made in bad taste. Where I do think a lot of the plot devices in this movie are not meant to make sense, and they're kind of just outlandish for the sake of being outlandish. Like,
I think a lot of it's meant to confuse you in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
but it also is just confusing. It's not like, oh, me as the audience member is meant to be confused. I feel like even the people in the world are confused as to what's going on.
Oh, 100%.
Well. But the idea of just like a parasitic twin having these superpowers feels so cornball. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's deformed, but he's actually a god. He has godlike powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but exactly. It's like, but why?
But
because it's cool.
But then he uses a knife.
So I will say, I do think that knife
is fucking
iconic
awesome,
murder
dude.
weapon.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really sick because if you're paying attention, be like if you look at the very first scene of Dr. Florence Weaver, she has received this award for her, work and
outstanding surgery skills or whatever it is.
Exactly. So, dude, how deep is that, bro? Gabriel's using
he took her own trophy and turned it against him. Dude, the symbolism right there is heavy.
Deep, bro. It just happened to be sharp as fuck.
No, because he took it to the attic and he was working on it.
But it was also like already a
knife.
Sharp. Yeah, and a reasonably peak. Like, what trophy comes like that? Just apparently this one.
Fucking sick.
Tight.
That's what that is a question that I have been asking myself, honestly, because like what you said, like a lot of the times these movies don't work for me because of what you're bringing up and what we're talking about. But this movie just fucking works for me. Like it really does. And like,
I will say that the action sequences, the parts with the camera work, in movies that usually suck as much as I think this one does, do not have that at all.
Right.
And so then it really falls like this movie fucking sucks, And like the last 25 minutes, the last 30 minutes of this thing is when it like, I think that's when you said like you sit around with the bros and what the fuck is happening. Yeah. That's when that's like you all are drunk and like you're like fuck yeah, you know what I mean?
It's a Batman melee scene. It becomes Pazuzu infecting Batman's body and fucking going ape shit on a fucking police station.
On like fucking 40 people.
Because I will say one of my other questions that I had, an entirely big plot hole, has to do with that same scene with him running down. And it's like, so he shoots Gabriel or gets hurt and a bunch of shit. Ross drives out and then she has no bruises or anything like that because she's supernatural. He could just heal himself, I'm guessing. But then why are you running from the bullet? If you have this super healing power,
because you have to have a chase scene.
I do.
You have to have long hallways.
I do love that.
Robert Eggers said that he got that from James Wan. The idea of the super long hallways. So even a thespian, an artist like Robert Eggers can see the value in the work of James Wan.
You know what's really funny is I was looking up just reviews and stuff. Stephen King said that this was his favorite the horror movie of the year.
Of course, because all he does is make horrible horror shit. Besides like It and a few other things.
And you know who else's favorite horror movie of the year was?
Stanley Kubrick.
Nick Cage.
Perfect you say that. I have this in my notes and I forgot to bring it up. That this movie is Nick Cage's spirit movie.
It should have been him.
It should have been.
Tell me right now, if this wasn't Nick Cage, this wouldn't be like, yo, that was so fucking good.
Why wasn't Nick Cage a detective? How fucking awesome would that have been?
Because James Wan's like, I'm not spending money on that.
Yeah,
My money's going elsewhere.
But I just think that's so funny. The fact that Stephen King and Nick Cage are both like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, it's so funny.
Two of our greatest weirdos.
Because I can picture Nick Cage being like, I should have been in this.
Yeah.
I should have.
I should have done that.
Okay, so I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I have all these answers, but I have spent some time on the wiki.
But I do have
page,
some answers,
right? So. I don't even know where they got this information. Like, honestly, I don't know if this is supposed to be fan fiction.
No, this is canon.
Yeah, because I said so. But the explanation is that because when they removed Gabriel, they weren't able to completely remove him because he's attached to her brain.
Right.
And you know how they push him back in?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Awesome. Awesome.
That is a pretty cool scene.
Awesome
Yeah, it
horror
is.
stuff right there.
Yeah.
Is that he has the ability to control, like, because he's part of the brain, it's like he has a grasp on how to use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the supernatural healing, the powers, all of that comes from him turning off her inhibitors in her brain. So, like, he's much like the movie Upgrade. He has upgraded her fucking brain. You know what I mean? So, like, when he takes over her body, it's like STEM, you know what I mean?
It's because we only use like 2% of our brains, and he unlocked it for her.
Gabriel is using the 100% of his brain at the whole time.
He turning it into a supercomputer.
Actually, I mean, I'm not gonna say like that's some great band-aid that okay, that totally makes sense, right? But in the very beginning of this movie, she gets her head busted open like twice, right? And when you're watching this, you're like, what the fuck? She should be dead because when she wakes up from that nap, the pillow's like completely soaked in blood,
Dude,
right?
the whole
She
fucking
should be
movie, she's
dead.
bleeding all over
She should
everything.
be dead.
This girl needs to be wearing a helmet.
I was legit waiting for the reveal to be like she's busted herself, she got brain damage, she's been flipping out
She's been
and
fucking
with
crazy the
people.
whole time.
Yeah, which is also another thing of why I think it's bad taste. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, head trauma, and then you get all these superpowers, and you go on killing sprees. It's kind of just, it's cheap. You know what I mean?
This movie is basically just a big warning against being in a toxic relationship.
Okay.
Because if she was not in that toxic relationship, Gabriel would have
not have
stayed
awoken
placed.
because she already learned how to put him back when she refused to kill her unborn sister.
Oh my god.
That's when she locked him in the Naruto Genjutsu. You know what I mean? She put Gabriel in the prison the first time.
In the empty space. Oh
So
my
in,
god.
in Malignant 2 Electric Boogaloo, when Gabriel re-breaks out, he's going to learn how to break out of the prison, and she's going to have to learn how to put him back. So, you know, I'm going to have to reserve this on my stubs immediately.
The teratoma.
Yeah, he's a teratoma, dude.
Tommy the teratoma.
So
Oh,
the
man.
idea is, though, that I guess I want to get this straight, that
I don't know if I can get this straight, but I'll try.
We'll
so
get
that,
that, Phil.
yeah, that he hasn't been strong enough to come out of her. He's just been waiting dormant, right?
So
He's
yeah.
been eating her unborn
but
children.
then he's been eating her unborn children, so he has enough strength to eat the unborn children. But then now he's waiting
well,
for
he's
her.
a parasite. That's
so
parasites
so
do.
now he's just been patiently waiting this
The-
whole time for her to get her head rocked.
I think that I mean if she
think it's
never
a happy accident
if she
for him.
that's why I'm saying that's mad convenient. But like if she never would have got her shit busted open, then he probably would have never came back. He just would have kept eating her babies, which sucks.
Which
but
is also like bad taste.
no, he's been eating my baby.
Dude, you're
Oh my
saying some awful shit in this movie. Like,
Jesus
yo,
Christ.
sucks to be a woman, huh?
Yeah,
that's
like-
what this movie kind of feels like.
Jesus.
I guess, yeah.
No, but yeah, dude, it's the convenience of her getting abused by her husband. Like, that's why she unlocks her powers, bro. Much like Magneto, you know, going through the Holocaust.
You know,
unlocked his powers.
you know how she was born? She was a child of what? Also another form of trauma.
Yeah.
No, her
Also
mom was
true.
like 15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is also like when
Yeah.
you get,
James
when you get the
Wan.
mom reveal, it's like, is that her sister or something?
That's
You
why
know what
I didn't even know who that was for the first half of the fucking movie, and then she fell out of the ceiling.
Okay, I've been meaning to say this for a while. Is that because you had brought up Jeepers Creepers and we had talked about Insidious, right? One of my favorite tropes in horror that we hardly get, it kind of has to be a bad movie to have it, is the villain or the entity like workshopping and doing their
Yeah.
everyday tasks.
Yeah.
Like I really do enjoy seeing that because it's just a perspective. Whether it's good or bad, it's something I hardly ever see and I tend to enjoy. So like the Red Demon in his workshop with the SpongeBob song going on,
Yep.
or Jeepers Creepers doing his shit with the human skins.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even realize until yesterday when I was watching Silence of the Lambs that I was like, dude, Jeepers Creepers totally bit that off. Like,
Yeah,
it's
they
just
did. I
Buffalo
know.
Bill, you
I was
know
thinking
what
the
I mean?
same shit.
Anyway,
I thought so too.
But I just really do enjoy seeing that stuff.
He's working on his
Bro, I
knife.
would have loved to see Gabriel do a couple sit-ups. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Some push-ups, like
Make
pumping up, getting
making
ready
some
to-
Easy Mac or something.
This is a little
What is
silly.
LNT?
But that's the reason why I think I like The Wailing so much. Is because we get
You do
his
get the
reveal
backstory, basically.
of where the guy. Yeah, I don't want to give out too much.
Let me tell you why The Wailing is 10 times better than Malignant. Obviously.
No, but it obviously because it does have one of those scenes where you see the evil entity like in their habitat.
Doing
You're like,
their
oh
own
shit,
thing.
I'm in. Oh fuck, I'm in their spots.
I agree. That is a really cool trope. It is a good trope.
It's just something you hardly ever see because, like I was saying off pod, I had watched the latest Paranormal Activity movie, and I couldn't believe like I was telling my wife, I looked at her, I was like, could you imagine? Like you're going through this situation and you never even get to see what killed you or what it was. You just get picked up by the air and dropped.
Yeah,
like,
for real.
That's so boring.
No, it's fucking cheap. But I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
So it's cool.
It went away.
No, it's cool, man. it's no biggie.
Do you want to talk about camera work for a bit? Because I mean, this is probably the thing you enjoy the most in this movie, right?
Yeah, you brought up the scene where they shot it with what did you say? A type of sports
Well, they call
camera.
them spider cams, but it's based
They're like
off
the
of the
sky
sky cam
cams,
that they
yeah.
use in sports.
So that was a scene where she first comes into the house that it was shot from above. That really was a standout for me. I don't think I've seen that used in pretty like in a while recently.
Honestly,
at
if
least.
not in horror, it would probably be action.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like maybe
he
like in
shoots
John
this
Wick or
movie
something.
like an action movie.
No, 100%.
He does.
That scene almost, I mean, it didn't like full on directly remind me of, but it kind of gave me the same vibes as like the Hereditary, like miniature houses. Like I just thought this is really cool.
This is kind of what I mean about James Wan being so like influential, even if he's not good, is that he innovated and did a lot of things that people are using now in horror movies, like the elongated hallways and the fucking the houses on a studio lot that have no walls. So you can make these dimensions ridiculous because you know a James Wan movie just by the house that is haunted. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you see it and you're like, James Wan.
Here we go. Yep.
They all look like these 1970s open floor plans. They all have a second story. They all have an attic.
Yep.
The hallways are ridiculously long, and it's so he can do these wide shots and like crazy angles that don't make any sense, or it adding a sense of like forebodingness of like how scary is it to walk down the hallway. And it's like, people who live in apartments, like, what are you talking about? I don't even have a hallway.
Yeah. No, that's something that this movie does extremely well. There's just the different confusing shots and the cool camera angles. And
Like Dutch angles.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you can tell
Tilted
something's going wrong.
sideways. But one of my favorite parts of this movie is when it's like in the beginning and the middle, like when she sees the kills and she's like transported to the kills,
that stuff
basically.
is cool.
That shit's really fucking cool to
her
me.
reality melting
Like the
away,
dissolving
right?
into the actual
I will say-
reality.
I think that works really well. I'm not sure, but I was gonna say because we get a lot of CGI work in like Marvel movies, but it usually looks really flat. But that looked really well because I think only the effect is CGI, but then they actually did use like 2 different rooms, so it does seem like it seems really like well. It meshes like her nightmare does become very like real because they shot on 2 real spots, not like the whole thing is CGI.
It's not like she's in a real bathroom and then it dissolves into a CGI world.
Yeah, exactly.
So you like it because it's going into another room.
It seems more seamless almost.
Yeah, because usually she's like standing in one of the ones, like she's standing in the middle of the room, and then the room, like the walls change, and then now she's still in the middle of the room, but it's a different room, and it obviously it's like they just shot in 2 different rooms. But it just seems like the effect is more as a transition, and it's cleaner because it's not like a wipe or a black screen. It's just it looks seamless as opposed to other movies that are heavy CGI.
Yeah.
I love the dissolving. Not that I think it looks amazing. I'm not like, whoa, that's the best dissolving
Right.
CGI
It looks
I've
cool.
ever seen.
It-
But I do think it really works for the story of trying to transport you into her mind of like what the fuck
What is
going
going on?
Okay, so if this was an A24 movie, it would not have the dissolving. She would just be in a different room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Just
she
wake
would-
up there.
She would like the one where she's in the laundry room and she looks into the
That's
washer,
my
and the
favorite shot.
lady's
And
head
she's
is in there
there.
screaming at her like, "What
Yep.
are you doing in my house?"
That shit's fucking awesome.
In an A24 movie, she would have closed that door. That still would happen. She would close the door, and then she would turn around, and the house would just be different. And
Yeah.
you would have and it would be like, "Whoa, what happened, bro?" But because James Wan is heavy-handed, he's like, "Let me show you exactly what's happening."
And I think
the
it-
reality's melting.
Yeah,
away.
and I think it works really well too because that happens like maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the movie, and each time you're like, oh fuck, like here we go again, like you know what I mean?
The dissolving and the radio static are your signs that Something's about
Something bad's gonna
And the
happen.
lights flickering.
And the walls will ooze green slime. They always do that.
Any these fuckers ever come out of the wall?
Actually, yes. My mom fell through the ceiling.
Fuckers do come through the wall, dude. So, I mean, I still want to talk about like the aesthetic and the look and the camera work and all that, but it made me think because the police work is so
Fucking awful.
yeah, and it's so like just comedic
Okay.
and it doesn't really fit in the movie, and it's intentional. That's the thing.
I
is
will
that-
say, hold on, just a
Go
quick segue. Right now, currently, we just finding out how. I mean, we're pretty ACAB on this on this podcast, so hopefully, I'm not saying too much, but. A policeman would not do the shit that the policeman in Malignant is doing anyway. So it'd be like, that's why it also throws me off. Like, this guy's fucking knows martial arts too. Yeah, right.
The shit that
Krakoa?
is
Yeah.
Krakoa knows all, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
the you know how like earlier I said it kind of reminds me of like a Lifetime movie world, right? And that's what the cops feel like is why the fuck are the police bringing around the sister and her? They're like, all right, the two of us and the two of you are already gonna investigate these murders. That's it. Like, we got this. It's just like, what do you mean? They're citizens. Like, what the fuck are you
What I will
talking
say
about?
about that, I feel like this brings up a point that we probably should have gotten to this already.
Love it.
Is that this movie is this isn't even, you can't even really say this. It's inspired by giallos, right? It's not actually one. It just has a
inspired.
lot of things. It has the sprinkles.
It
If
has
this is
black gloves,
Look, Taro, if this is a
knife.
shit ice cream sundae, these are the sprinkles that are going on top of it. You know what I mean? It's not a flavor. It's just some garnish, you know? It's the look of the movie, right? It's like the detective stuff, the black gloves, the knife, the mystery,
The red light.
and the reveal,
Yeah.
right? But those are not the things that are really driving this movie. But I will say, in a lot of giallos, that does happen, where a regular person will get caught in this whirlwind case that they shouldn't even be in. Like, which one is it? Is it Deep Red? Where he's an author going on tour and he sees a murder, so then he just gets involved in the case because he saw it. And they're like, hey, buddy, here you go. Take a badge.
In Black Lace, she's just a model.
Exactly. Be like, you know what I mean? And these movies were critically panned back in their day too, but just like Malignant, it's like I can see the value in this garbage.
Yeah.
But getting back to like the camera work and stuff like that, I mean, we all know what the superstar here is, right? It's that last scene.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. Like, that's the scene that everybody talks about for sure.
I think the hardest looking scene though, where I'm like, wow, this is actually cinema. It's when the mom falls through the house, right?
Naturally.
No. And then Annabelle, sorry, that's her real name. Sorry, Madison/Emily realizes what just happened and that she is Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
When she's screaming in the cop car and it's raining all heavy,
And the
that fake
music
movie
comes
rain,
in?
the new metal, the
Yup.
red and blue flashing. Kakoa's walking through like he's some fucking iconic actor. I'm just like, bro, this is cinema.
Dude,
Like,
yeah.
this is the best looking shot in this movie.
I love that.
I had to bring that up before we talk about the final.
Yeah,
showdown.
no. Oh god, no, that's really good. I think my favorite shot or scene is the hotel scene. Probably, I love that. The red light, and you can see out the window. I think that shit's really
Oh,
cool.
and the
Oh,
other
what
thing
you
that
found,
makes
yeah.
it giallo is the ridiculous amount of gore. Like this dude is
Yeah,
busting people's
he's stabbing him in the
faces open.
face. Like, oh my god.
Yeah,
It's a
I mean,
lot.
like, when we talked about X, I kind of wish X had gone that far too, of like busting the face open. You
Yeah.
know, just like if we've already fallen into batshit territory, we might as well just keep going. You
You're
know,
rated R, man.
Yeah,
you gotta
go
take
for it.
advantage of it.
you got to earn that rating, right? Like fuck yeah, we're using some blood in this shit.
Yeah, come on.
Okay,
But the end scene.
the end scene. I'm pro Gabriel killing all these people in the police station.
we needed this. This is what we needed.
This is more of the camp, more of the outlandish ridiculousness. And the reason I say like the camp and the comedy is because our main character is just minding her own business in jail. And, you know, you get your typical tropey prisoners,
Yeah,
right?
your,
Where they're
your
just going to fuck her up
70s
because she's sitting
prostitutes.
there. What the hell is that,
I
right?
don't know.
I just think James Wan is so obsessed with the 70s aesthetic because the houses, dude, she's driving like a 73 Corolla,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But then you see like flat screen TVs and stuff like that. He took inspiration from Batman, the animated series, where it's like, is it noir or is
Where
it
are we
futuristic?
living
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now? Yeah.
You know, like he really blends those two worlds. But yeah, the 70s like prostitutes and what else are they? Criminals? I don't even
Yeah,
know
I
what to
don't
call
know.
them, right? Why
Zoe
are they?
Bell's mullet.
Iconic.
Yeah.
And it's adding to the great list of mullets we've covered on this show. Titan, The Last Duel, Malignant.
I didn't even know she was in this up until I watched it.
It's that Australian connection.
I like her a lot.
I mean, she's stunt heavy.
She's QT's been a lot of QT stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a movie person and you're listening to the show, you probably have at least heard of her because she did so much work on Kill Bill.
Epic stunt woman.
Yeah, and in this one, she just gets her shit fucked.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
They get wrecked.
So by this point in the movie, Ro, has it just been so bad that this reveal for you is just like whatever? I don't really.
I mean, I saw it coming.
Well, you've also seen this clip before you'd seen this movie, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's not the. Yes, I seen that clip. So I mean, it's not like the clip is a reveal if you just watch the clip before you watch the movie. But the reveal, I mean, the poster has two faces on it.
But does it? It's a mind.
I mean, like, come on.
I honestly didn't really. I didn't know it was gonna happen.
Because I mean, it just started off. Let's cut out the cancer. I just thought there were so many cues that it's
This type of horror movie.
They're obviously connected. It'd be like, so what? Like, cause I don't know, because he's so not good at developing stories with his characters. I'm like, so you're gonna show me something? Oh, that has nothing to do with it though. Be like, you just showed me this in the beginning, so obviously it has everything to do with what's happening. So
Honestly,
I just did see it
upon
happening.
rewatches, he gives it away in the first like 10 minutes because when her husband gets killed, which is actually her doing it, right? She's like, it's all in my head. It's all in my head. It's
Yeah.
all in my head. No, it really
literally
is
is
all
in your head.
Like, it's not heavy-handed.
I will say too, actually, I did notice that in the opening credits, there's like all the like files, like the names, her names and pictures.
Gives
you can
everything away.
You can get
the
it,
whole
yeah.
story's right there.
And you can see him cutting the limbs off and doing all that stuff too.
So I think I
Cool
had
when Seven does it.
it was hard. Obviously, I would say most people don't really actually pay attention to those scenes when those first like the opening credits
Probably
are
not.
rolling by. So that's why he did it. I don't blame
Yeah.
him for that. Like most directors would probably do something like that because once you watched it, be like, oh shit, the whole
Oh,
story's
wow,
right
Easter
there.
eggs.
Yeah, but like when you're
Hey,
watching
Midsummer.
it,
Whoa, so
Yeah.
artistic when he laid out the whole thing in a painting, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I love that movie, but we can't pretend that those are not similar.
Yeah.
so
similar
that's
things.
not a. I'm not taking him down for that, but I was gonna say I did see it coming because I paid attention to those little things in the beginning, which sometimes I don't. Sometimes they go over my head. I just happened to this time, and then I saw the poster. Back to your question, a little bit, yeah. Like at this point, it's what's going on is fucking fun. Don't get me wrong. Once it starts on, I do think once like even you get the body horror reveal, which you guys said there's a prosthetic that thing, like him on her back
Dude,
and
with the
just-
arms
and the
going?
lights going off, like that's really good.
That shit's
That's
awesome.
really good. And I think it's probably like a little 5 minutes before that. From there to the end, like yeah, it's full gas, but it's such. There's so many potholes, yeah, by this point for me that I'm like, you were so anxious to just get to this cool ass part that you did not give a fuck about 75-80% of the movie.
I mean, yeah. I feel
cannot
the same
argue
way, too.
against that,
I
yeah.
mean, it's not like I would never tell you that you were wrong for not liking this movie. You know what I mean? And not even because I like to be civil or like, oh, everybody has their own opinions. It's I see it.
Yeah,
I
no,
understand.
100%.
Yeah, it just for some reason it hits me in a weird place where I'm like, this is fucking bad, dude. I just think it's because James Wan was such an important part of me watching movies growing up. Honestly, I have a soft spot for him, and like I would see anything he does. But that fight scene is so fucking sick.
It's
dude.
ridiculous. I mean,
Because James Wan wants to have as much in camera as he possibly can. So what we talked about earlier with her choreography and then the crazy sky cams going around, like I don't even mean this in a bad way. It looks like a video game.
Yeah,
It does.
it does. Look
And like
like
I would argue that this sequence is like the best video game adaptation I've ever seen, like the style of what video games do. Because like I don't know if you've seen recently on Twitter, there's a clip going around of the Halo show, and it's a fight scene shown through Master Chief's first person
haven't seen that one,
perspective.
no.
So it's Master Chief fighting some aliens, and it's through his helmet, like the whole thing, and all you can see is the helmet and the gun. And people were shitting on it about how it doesn't work, and like this will never work. And I'm like, well, insert Malignant, because that does work
That
from
does,
the
yeah.
third person perspective of like, this is what I want to do when I'm playing Devil May Cry, or like Sekiro or one of those games where it's like you get to go into melee mode and just fuck people.
The camera's
up.
just whipping around. It's just so cool. I mean, she's throwing chairs at people, or he's throwing chairs at people. He cuts off a cop.
Throwing chairs
Yeah, exactly. He cuts off a cop's arm and throws that arm at somebody. Like it's just so
Splits
funny.
a cop in half.
I
with
know.
his bare hands, like a grizzly bear, bro.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
And it's because he turned off the inhibitors in her brain, bro. He unlocked all her powers.
It's over 9,000.
Oh man. I mean, yeah, I have a feeling that this movie might have hit me so hard too because last year was not good for horror.
No.
I mean, do you have a favorite horror movie from last year, either of you?
Oh man. I mean, honestly, like
I had to think about it.
Some I saw, and I know you'd seen this one. Okay, so like Censor or The Night House, or we could count Lamb and Teton, I guess.
I was going to say, actually, I'm glad that you brought it up. Censor is, I think the way you guys feel about Malignant is the way I feel about Censor. Like, it's the same. Somebody's making a B movie, but to me, Censor works. But if somebody could tell me that movie's shit, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty shit. But to me, it works.
Okay, Malignant doesn't deserve this comparison, but I'm going to do it anyways because that's what you do on a podcast. You have to make bold claims, right? Malignant is a Jackson Pollock painting.
just all
One
over
of
the
us could
fucking
look at
place.
it and be like, yo, this is tight. I see what he's doing here.
And like,
And
this
someone
is
else could look at
shit.
it and be like, yo, who made this?
Yeah.
A 5-year-old?
Yeah.
So
No, I mean that could.
I did that.
That does make sense.
Yeah. But I just think last year was not good for horror.
No, I mean it just I don't know, like it just hit me in a really good spot. Like there are some scenes that are like pretty disturbing, like legitimately. I think Gabriel as like a villain, like I mean all plot holes and like story and all that aside, like is a pretty scary fucking villain. Like the backwards walking, the face and everything, like it's terrifying. And that big ass knife, like that would scare the fuck out of me if I woke up and that's in my room. You know what I mean?
Malignant kind of feels like a movie that you might have discovered on accident, like as a kid, right?
I think we talked about this last podcast or, you know, some other time, but you were saying like this would be a movie that you would grab from Blockbuster when you're like 8 years old because you're like, oh, this cover looks cool. And it just ends up being this crazy movie and you end up falling in love with it.
I thought it was going to end like this.
Fuck no, dude, nobody did. Like I just thought it was going to be a goat. Like legitimately, like upon my first viewing, until you get the reveal what's really going on, is I just thought that she had like an imaginary, like, you know, like a split personality or something, and she had this imaginary friend that would like take over, which is what it was, but in the craziest way possible.
Well, yeah, my first time, I was like, well, okay, so they removed Gabriel from her, right? But then how did he like form his own body? You know, like that's what I was thinking because the beginning does try to confuse you where, so what's happening throughout the entire movie is that because he has these powers, because why not? He can lock her in a mental prison where she doesn't know she's in one, right? So she can see what's going on and she can see her own body. It's quite Doctor Strange like.
A little bit,
But
actually.
she can actually like, you know, not to be funny here, but like she can like astral project and see her own body doing these things, but she doesn't have the idea that it's actually her doing it. And then another way it's given away right away is that the cop says like, no break-in, a motive, like obviously it was her, right?
Yeah.
And that cop is in on it from the very beginning. But for some reason for me, and like I said, maybe I'm just a bad movie watcher, I was still like waiting for the reveal. So when it did happen, it just blew me away.
yeah, I was
It
like,
was
let's
what the fuck
fucking
is
go.
going
Like there's
on?
ET on the back of her shit. Like
It's not anywhere near as effective as this, but it's like the alien chest burster moment, you
Yeah.
know, where it's like, oh, I did not see that coming. That something was just gonna pop out of the back of her head. Yeah, so
I guess, and I got confused by the beginning because she gets her shit, like she gets knocked out.
she gets rocked.
By who though? Herself?
Yeah. See, that doesn't make sense actually. Like
Because-
that for real does not.
Because
make
then, like you said too, be like, because at one point in the beginning it shows Gabriel, and it seems like at first when you're watching it, like how I did, I thought, oh, Gabriel is his own entity.
sense. Yes.
Because it makes it seem like, but she says it's time to cut out the cancer. So after I was like, oh no, that was the surgery. Like that was him trying to stop them from fucking with everything. But then I was like, then yeah, who rocked her at the house? She just knocked herself out, and then it kind of just like,
No,
I don't know. That's
that for sure does not make sense. Like there's no way it does, because the reveal later is that Gabriel's her, she is Gabriel, right? Then who could have knocked her out? Unless, and this is going too too deep is like that is also part of the illusion that she was knocked out the second time.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
that is
Then why even film it that way?
That's not even a defense. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna be like,
Because
no, bro, this happened. And you're not understanding.
One of the first worst things that I fucking noticed was like you said they use some of the CGI. Some of the CGI they use is terrible, and it was that scene where it's like a shadow. He's just a shadow. It looked like an unlocked character in Smash Brothers.
Tight.
And like, but. Who is that body then if it's supposed to be her and she's up in the bed? I mean, like, so that was the part that I'm like, I guess if you thought you could piece it together, that would throw you off, but then it's literally because it doesn't make sense, not because it's a fucking like.
So when this mental prison stuff that happens, it kind of changes throughout the movie. So like you're saying, in the first instance of it, she can see everything, right? And she sees Gabriel as a different entity, but in all the other ones, it shows her melting away. But then you never see her again.
Exactly.
You have to think of it as like, okay, she's the camera, right? So she turns into the camera and you're seeing through her eyes. And I feel like maybe it's that. It's because he set it up one way, but then he uses it different ways. And I do think it's meant to disorient you.
Yeah, no, I think it's used as like a confusing.
And it's as simple as that, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never mistake James Wan for being a deep filmmaker.
But I just that was one of the ones where I'm like, okay, like it was just a plot hole that I mean sometimes some of the movies we like in retrospect I'm like, oh, that's a plot hole, but then this one was just so evident in my face where I was just kind of like, what? Like because I knew where it was like I thought I knew where it was going and then I confirmed it, but then I was like, how does that make any sense though in the beginning?
I'll say this, I don't want to say you're being nitpicky because I do think this movie does have a lot to pick.
This movie is kind of Swiss cheesy, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of holes, man. It's got a lot of holes.
Swiss cheesy. Add that to our lexicon. If you made it this far, message us. Swiss cheesy. It's like, okay, so we talked about you're going to be getting a Silence of the Lambs episode from us soon, right? And that's one of the greatest movies of all time, right?
Yeah.
But the Hannibal Lecter escape from prison is one of the most plot-holey, nitpicky scenes in the entirety of cinema, bro.
Yeah, no, it is. I did want to talk about that when we got to it.
But because that movie is so good, that's a small piece of shit wrapped around a diamond versus what you could argue this movie is the other way around.
And it's also not contented. Like it doesn't matter for the actual plot of the movie.
Not
like,
really, but they do set up this idea that Hannibal Lecter is like Omega OP, like Gabriel level OP. Like, dude, he literally strung up a man by himself.
Disemboweled him.
We'll get to it in a couple weeks. We'll get to it in a couple weeks.
Exactly.
It's different. It's
The
different.
Exorcist doesn't have any plot holes. The Exorcist isn't
It's
nitpicky.
different. It's different.
You know, I know. I'm just saying. I do think those are funny because yes, depending on how good a movie is, there is
there's like a forgive meter. You know what I mean? Like you can forgive a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of shit in this movie that I don't forgive. I'm just fucking riding with it. You know what I mean? But
yeah. Definitely.
yeah.
I'm not gonna go on much longer. I don't want to torture Ro. That's not why I'm in this business. Is to make my friend feel awful. I don't want anyone to have the worst day of their job. But I will say, do you think watching this movie by yourself versus like talking to us about it kind of makes it more fun? Like it is that type of movie where like it would have been more fun as an experience of like, you know, like we said, having a couple beers, watching the movie, not taking it seriously.
I mean, yeah, but I don't watch any other movie like that.
Well, you're just a true cinephile. That's why. I don't watch anything bad ever.
No, I don't watch any movie thinking like I have to get like. Okay, sometimes we've gone to Golden Road. Shout out Golden Road to like
sponsor us, bro.
Yeah,
to like we'll drink 2 beers and then we'll go have a movie. But even we've had the argument like, oh, maybe I had a beer too much for this movie. Like it was a little slower than I thought. But I never was like, oh, let me drink 4 of these and hop on this movie because the plot doesn't fucking matter. And I don't need to pay attention because I'm still going to like this movie for what's thrown in my face. But, dude, I watch sports for that. Like, to give me that drive. Like, I don't need to watch a movie for that. Like, that makes no sense. But that's not what I'm in it for, man. Personally.
I'm in this for the art. The art of commercial filmmaking. All right. Well, I mean, I think you know how me and Nate feel about this movie. So
Look,
this
man.
is just a movie that is going to be contentious for many years on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a good debate to have because, like, I think all the points that you make are not invalid. Like, they're totally valid. And I think this movie hits with some people, it doesn't with others. But, I mean, if you haven't, I definitely think this movie is worth checking out.
If you're a true horror fan, unlike one
Because
of
this
us,
movie was
fuck
made
it.
for you, okay? But no, I mean, shit, like, you like James Wan, you don't. Like, this movie is different than a lot of his other movies. It's a lot of fun. I think that, I mean, yeah, like, this is just a movie that I'm going to be watching for the next 10, 15 years, and I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I've hopped on the train of, like, I know this sounds crazy. It's like, that this is going to be one of my great movies where I was like, I was there when it happened, bro. I seen it. I know how crazy it was. Like, is not to compare them. I don't want to make anybody upset. But, like, when people saw The Thing the first time and they're like, yo, I fucking love this movie. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. You know what I mean? Like, that is how I feel about this movie, where it's like, I feel like we're early champions, you know, where I'm like, I was there, bro. I seen Malignant. Like,
No,
they
I
don't
like
make
it.
them like this anymore. And I truly do believe that, because we only live in the world now of the heady A24 neon movies or regurgitated slasher crap, honestly. Like, I know Fear Street was put on our list, but, like, that came out last year as well. Those three movies, they're awful. I like them, but they're awful. And I just think that James Wan is kind of in this weird world of, like, he's mainstream, but he still likes to, you know, push the
Do
boundaries
his own
a
weird
little
shit,
bit.
yeah.
Versus, like, the A24 meme, like, nobody, and then A24 be like naked man in the hallway.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, and if you're one of those people, maybe, you know, open your mind to both, because that's a cool part about liking films, is that there's all types of different films you can like, whether they're good or bad. And I would never be like, yo, this movie shouldn't exist. You know, like, I don't know. I think as a true horror fan, like, I can appreciate all aspects of it. Anyways, though, but I do think there's only really two types of things going on, and this one is its own weird little thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Anything else?
I don't
know
think
Roto
so.
got nothing else to
No.
say.
This movie's not gonna grow on me.
That's fine. Not like a teratoma.
No. Yeah, I was gonna say, that's why I said that. Like, it's not gonna be a grow up on me and be
This
a fucking-
this movie seemed to be more benign for you, rather
yeah,
than
exactly.
Malignant.
That's what I was, good point. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
End it on that one.
Pretty benign.
Goodbye.